Hi everyone, this is Colin, ModernVivo's CTO. Today I'd like to give you a walkthrough of our software. First, let's run a search. You can see from the homepage that we currently have several searches already. One for NAFL or MASLD, and one for type 2 diabetes with rats using GLP-1 drugs. Let's say we want to run a search for type 2 diabetes mellitus using GLP-1 drugs, but in mice instead of rats. First, we'll navigate to the search builder in the navigation bar. We've built the search builder to function similarly to Google Scholar, PubMed, and other keyword-based search tools that you've used in the past. We can click the Enter Keywords box and type in our keywords here. So I'll type in type 2 diabetes mellitus here, and you can see when you type in keywords, you can either include them as inclusion criteria, and this is the default if you just hit Enter here, or you can exclude them, or include those keywords as exclusion criteria. For now though, we'll just type in mice and GLP-1. Perhaps we want to exclude rats from this search, since we already have a search looking at rats. This is where we could type in rats and hit exclude. And you'll see that the search query has been updated to include and not rats. We can also edit the search query directly. If you click the edit button for the search query, you can now update the operators and the keywords themselves. So let's go ahead and delete and not rat and type these in manually. We can say and not rats. And this will give us the same search query as if we included rats as an exclusion criteria from the box above. When editing the search query directly, we can also make use of more advanced Boolean type searches. Let's say we wanted to expand T2DM to also include type 2 diabetes. First, we will open a parentheses around T2DM. We would say or, and then we'll say, and if you want to enter a keyword that is composed of multiple words, you have to first open a quote. Then we can say type 2 diabetes, close the quote, hit enter, and close the parentheses. We can now click save, and the search will update. You can see on the right, as we're entering these keywords and editing the search query, we'll estimate how many papers we expect to find and the total search duration, or how long we expect the search process to actually take on our end. Now, the papers that are listed here as relevant papers, this is just the number of papers that we expect to actually return to you in our search results. In reality, we'll process far more papers than just the ones that we list here. Many papers, for example, are behind a paywall or otherwise inaccessible for our system. Some papers as well, of course, don't discuss in vivo research. As we estimate the number of papers that we expect to find in a search, sometimes your search keywords will result in too many papers being found. So for example, let's go ahead and delete all of these keywords, with the exception of type 2 diabetes. This will most likely find too many papers for our system to process. Internally, we have a cap of about 10,000 papers to process at the top of the funnel. So in this case, just typing in type 2 diabetes or T2DM is going to find more than 10,000 papers. And so we'll return, and you'll see in the search estimate box here that the keywords that we've entered so far are too broad, and that we should narrow the search by including other keywords. So we can go back here and re-add the existing keywords that we had. Sometimes as well, the search keywords that you'll enter will result in us finding perhaps no papers. So if we add a obviously mistyped or an obvious typo, I'll just type in some gibberish here. This is not going to return any papers. You'll see that our system says that your search keywords or search query is too narrow, and that the keywords result in no papers being found. This is where you would want to broaden your search, perhaps typing in synonyms for keywords that you have, of course checking your keywords as typed for any typos, and here we can go back and delete the erroneous keyword, and you'll see that we're brought back to the original estimate. In the next step of the search builder, you'll select the actual conditions or the information that you would like our system to extract for you from all of the papers that we process. We have conditions built in ranging from information about the animals in a study, their ages, their species, to cell lines, if any were used in an in vivo study, perhaps in a xenograft model or xenograft study, all the way to information about the experimental housing that the animals were put in for a study, how samples in a study were collected, all the way to information about vendors, animal chow product codes, the vendors for animal chow, for example. We also add new conditions at all times. If there's ever any information that you would like us to extract, any conditions that you would like us to extract from papers for which you don't already see an existing well-fit condition that you can select, just reach out and we're more than happy to add new ones for you to select. For this search, let's go ahead and select a basic set. Finally, on the search confirmation page, this is where you'll give your search a name, you'll select how many papers to process, and you'll select the order in which to process those papers. So let's start off by naming this search. Next, let's select how many papers we want our system to process. Because we expect to find between 75 and 395 papers, let's just go ahead and select the maximum number of papers, the 395, for our system to process. Finally, we can adjust the paper processing order, but this is only relevant if you wish to process less than the maximum number of papers that we would expect to find for a given search. So let's say instead of 395, let's say we're only interested in processing 40 papers for a given search. Here, this is where selecting a paper processing order matters. For example, the default order of citation count descending, if you select the default order of citation count descending, our system would process the 40 most cited papers of the 395 or more that we could process for a given search. But since we want to process all papers in a search, selecting an exact order here doesn't really matter. Finally, we can submit the search. And you'll be brought to the search history page where you can see that the search is now in progress. As a search is in progress, the search process will go through two separate stages. In the first stage, our system is gathering all possible papers that we can process. It's using the keywords that you've entered and finding all possible relevant papers. In the second step, we actually go through each of those papers, we filter out papers based off of a set of internal filter criteria, and then we'll actually extract the conditions that you have selected and requested for us to extract from each of those papers.